This is a mercy. Shatter. Do not stand in my way. Behold, the rage of winter. This is a mercy. Rise, my fallen champions. Aid, shatter. Do not stand in my way. This is a mercy. Come, sons of Artor, aid me. This is a mercy. Shatter. Do not stand in my way. This is a mercy. I did what I must to protect my people.
Hey guys, got a new last Epoch build. This one might seem a little bit similar than the one I made last week, but a little bit different. It's kind of the same idea. We're doing the spark charges on a sorcerer again, but this time we are only doing spark charges. We're not going into the static orb for extra DPS and stuff like that. And mainly the thing is that I kind of think that static orb is going to be nerfed. Well, mainly the interaction between the mana stacking static orb is just a little bit too strong to, you know, and I think it is going to get nerfed eventually. So I wanted to make a spellblade, or not spellblade, a sorcerer build that uses the spark charges. And one of the main problems with spark charges is you have very bad single target. So I wanted to kind of fix the single target from the build, and what we ended up doing is going into Arcane Ascendance with Lightning Blast and the autocast Lightning Blast, and our Lightning Blast is set up to basically pop the spark charges or detonate the spark charges. So if you don't know, spark charges, they do have a 0.7 second cooldown. Or cooldown, they explode after 0.7 seconds. Okay, so the damage can feel a little bit delayed sometimes, but if we are detonating the spark charges with our lightning blast, everything happens just like instantly, and it looks really cool, right? So all right, let's just run a quick monolith real quick so you guys can see. This build is able to do T4 Julra very comfortably. Damage isn't really how would you say, I think right now on my character the damage is okay. It's not really super fast, but when we go over my gear, you can see that my gear is basically all defense orientated. I don't have hardly any offensive stats on my gear. So you could get the damage up quite a lot higher and still have the same amount of tankiness that my build has. You can pretty much just face tank T4 Julra, all of her abilities and stuff like that. All right, so let's jump into the Echo real quick. Okay, so this is about 270-ish corruption. Didn't really have time to go all the way past 300, but you know, should not really be that much of a problem. You can see the modifiers over here. So basically, normally with these spark charges, you just right click, right? But we have this Arcane Ascendance set up over here, and the nice thing about that is you can actually activate it while you're right clicking, right? So you can start attacking, then you can just activate it for a split second, or you know, you can keep keep it activated if you want. But nice things you can do is, we'll show you over here if we find some mobs. If there is any mobs over here, where's all the mobs? All right, so we got a pack of mobs here. So let's just see. If we attack these guys normally, you can see it does take there's a little bit of a delay before these things are detonated, right? But if we use Arcane Ascendance, you can see that it pops like right away. And Lightning Blast does end up doing quite a bit of damage, extra damage. So it does help our single target quite a bit. Also, Arcane Ascendance is giving us quite a bit of spell power, or increased spell damage, right? So it does help our spark charges on the single target. Alright, so that is the echo completed. Let's go back here and see how what we're doing with the build and stuff like that. Okay, so like I mentioned before, let's go over some of the skills we're using. So mainly going into Mana Strike to apply the spark charges, and let's see, then we have Lightning Blast over here. We're not actually directly casting this, we're proccing it with Arcane Ascendance over here. But basically Lightning Blast is set up to apply spark charges, to detonate the spark charges, and then we have it set up to chain and then repeat, right? So it kind of, also, yeah, getting us lightning ages. So while we're doing bossing, or when we're just kind of like in turret mode, I like to call it, we just activate Arcane Ascendance and we just right click away. We'll be getting lightning ages pretty consistently, so that is pretty nice. Alright, then after that, Arcane Ascendance, we have it set up over here with Acuity, so it now only has a 2-second cooldown. And it no longer drains our mana. It only affects 4 spells, but since we're not actually casting spells, well, it's basically, you know, infinite. Or not infinite, but, you know, it lasts the full 12 seconds. Right, and then we have it set up over here to cast Lightning Blast on hit. So basically, if we're attacking with our Mana Strike and we pop it Arcane Ascendance, since we are basically hitting with Mana Strike like so often, it's gonna instantly shoot out a Lightning Blast the moment you pop your Arcane Ascendance. So it's very nice for like some on-demand damage when you say there's a rare or something you have to kill like right away. You can just pop Arcane Ascendance for a second and everything will just blow up. Alright, so that's pretty nice. And then we just have it to give us some spell damage, to kind of give us some more damage to our spark charges and also lightning blast. Right, and this thing is very nice here too. So we have 8% more damage per slow. So, you know, scaling damage on spark charges there's very limited ways to actually scale these spark charges. Mainly, I guess we're going to be doing it with intelligence. I don't see, my gear isn't really set up perfectly, so I don't really have a lot of intelligence. You can see only 43 intelligence, mainly because I wanted to go for endurance stacking and do a damage taken before life, damage taken to mana before life, right? So getting a very nice endurance threshold is going to require a lot of exalted endurance threshold gear, right? So then that basically means you're not going to be able to go for these intelligence affixes and stuff like that. So, and actually I don't even have any good damage prefixes on my rings or belts, so I guess 23% increased lightning damage if you want to count that, but ideally you'd have like intelligence, stuff like that on these pieces of gear. But anyways, let's go over the gear later. So Arcane Intelligence, casting Lightning Blast, and just reduce the cooldown here. So very nice. So Arcane Ascendance giving us quite a bit of damage. And also one nice thing is this haste duration here. We're getting a very big uptime on haste. So if you're standing in Arcane Ascendance for like 12 seconds, well, then you're going to get 12 seconds of haste. Right, so that's pretty nice. Okay, so the basic concept of the build, basically just Spark Charge, Arcane Ascendance, proccing Lightning Blast, and then we are getting very tanky with Fractured Crowns with damage taken, damage dealt to mana before health, and then we're endurance stacking. Basically, basic concept of the build. Alright, so let's go over the gear. I like to do the gear first. We kind of did a quick overview of the skills, but let's go into detail. Alright, so first of all, Fractured Crown. Yeah, what's not really much to say about that, but we're doing a sort of mind over matter kind of build. And let's go over this amulet real quick. This is just something I had from my previous character, and I was actually using one of those jade amulets. You know, something with, you know, lightning penetration or crit multi, one of these ones that increase your attack speed. But since we are doing a damage, you know, dealt to mana, you do kind of want to have a decent sized mana pool. And also, since we are speccing into Arcane Ascendance and Lightning Blast, that means we have to either choose Flame Ward or Teleport, okay? So And why is that important as well? You know, stun immunity, right? So if you go for teleport, you get the stun immunity. If you don't go for teleport, well, you're going to be getting stunned, right? So in order to kind of counteract that, I tried teleport as well, and it was nice, but you know, having flame ward, the double flame ward, especially with all the damage and defense it can give you, was in the end felt a little bit better. The way, like, at least the way I like to play was where I just kind of activate Arcane Ascendance and then just kill everything and just become, you know, you become the turret, right? So in the end, decided to go with the Flame Ward. So basically just using the Strong Mind to get a lot of mana, which is very nice for the for defense. And then, yeah, basically we just get a lot of stun avoidance. So let's see, stun avoidance at 1,271. We still do get stunned every now and then by like big hits and stuff like that, but it's not really enough to annoy me that much. Okay, so for the weapon, you're going to want a Rune Dagger, obviously, for the crit chance and spell damage. Let's see, mine is really not the best. Ideally, you probably don't want to have an Exalted Lightning damage. I just really didn't have any Rune Daggers that were good enough. So you want to have the crit multi, and then you want attack speed as the other prefix, right? So either one of them exalted is fine. You can either have an exalted crit multi or exalted attack speed, whichever one you want. I guess attack speed would probably feel a little bit better if you have that as the exalted affix. All right, then for the suffixes for the weapon, you're going to want to have slow. And I think the other one doesn't really matter. I guess shock would be nice to have, or armor shred, right? But the reason we want slow is because, so in Arcane Ascendance, we are getting 8% more damage per slow whenever we're in Arcane Ascendance, right? And while we do have a chance to slow enemies, right, that are over 5 meters away. So when we're in Arcane Ascendance, I think 5 meters is probably around something like this kind of area here. Let's just stand right in the middle. So I think maybe, yeah, around like here-ish is around the 5 meters. So if we're hitting anything around here, let's just say, then they'll be getting slowed, right? So that's fine. We'll get the full bonus of this Arcane Ascendance, you know, more damage. So slow stacks up 3 times, right? So it's a pretty big increase for the spark charges. But what happens when, say, you're on a boss where you can't actually be that far, or if there's mobs that are close by, right? So kind of to make it so we always get this 8%, or not 8%, this more damage bonus, having slow on your weapon is going to make it so that, you know, you're always applying the slow stacks, and then so whenever, it doesn't really matter if they're close or far, right? So be nice to get slow on your weapon as well. All right, so for the chest, you're going to need a lot of levels to mana strike, right? Okay, so basically the way we have it set up here is we are going to need to reduce the mana cost of these mana storm arcs, right? So since we are playing a damage dealt to mana build, we would need to be able to regenerate our mana enough and still be able to apply, I mean, do a lot of damage with mana strike. If you want to have a lot of these like extra damage things, nodes that I have, then you're going to need a +4 to mana strike, right? I think maybe you could do it with a +3, but I think you will need a +4 to mana strike to make it feel like, I mean, to get all of the nodes that you kind of want. There's so many good nodes on mana strike, and yeah. All right, so +4 mana strike, intelligence, and then I guess whatever, you know, suffixes you need, defense, armor, stuff like that. This isn't really the right base. You probably want the crit multi-base, but yeah, that's kind of all I had right now. All right, so for the offhand, the fragment of the Enigma, this is the one for my other Spark Charge build, or the Static Orb build that I'm using. So you probably want to get like, you know, crit chance or some other kind of offensive stuff, mods on yours. All right, so let's go over the rings and belt. This is what we're going to use to get our endurance threshold. So we have exalted endurance threshold. You ideally want T7 on here, and then you want percent endurance. So exalted endurance threshold, percent endurance. And you know, I guess there is kind of a debate to go on about whether endurance is good or not. I think when I was reading on Reddit and other on the forums and stuff like that, it seems that building endurance or HP, it's like basically the same EHP value. I think HP does kind of come out on the end, but it's like only about like what, 3 to 5%, a little bit better. But the nice thing about endurance is endurance, well, it's kind of a long topic to get into, but long story short, endurance, it makes your leech, your regen, all your regen is more effective because you're reducing damage first of all. And then you have a smaller HP pool, so you regen faster, right? So regen is more effective, and then endurance applies to damage over time. So I'm constantly taking 60% less damage from damage over time, so I'm able to stand in like poison pools, the those diamond matrix, the beam they make, you can stand in the beam as long as you're, you know, leeching or whatever, right? So I like endurance. Probably never want to build HP again if I can afford to, just because how good endurance feels to play. All right, so that's why I'm going endurance on this character again. Belt, you want exalted endurance threshold, and then you want cooldown recovery speed on the other suffix. And then, yeah, the ring. This is just the ring I had for my other character that I'm using. Okay, so for gloves, if you get your armor shred, you probably want to get it on the weapon. So you want to get some endurance threshold, and then I guess you can either get your armor shred on your weapon, gloves, or the amulet. So you have to get either armor shred. Let's see, we need shock, we need armor shred, and then we need frailty. So either one, so you get frailty maybe on the amulet, you get armor shred on the gloves, and maybe shock on the weapon, or whichever one you want. But just kind of, I guess, try to get at least those three ailments. And yeah, this probably should be the exalted endurance threshold. You don't really need 138% chance to shred armor. Like I'm already at, I think on bosses I get up to about 130, 140 stacks, so that's a little bit too much. I think you want I think around 100 stacks of armor shred is considered to be kind of the sweet spot, you could say. So, all right, so for boots, you could use a rare pair of boots if you want. I'm just using these mainly because I hit the T6 movement speed on these, which is pretty sweet. And then these give you quite a lot of resistances. So if you look at it, it has basically three tier 4 or tier 5 resistance suffixes, right? So items can usually only have 2 of these, but this has 3, so that's pretty nice. So it does cover some of the resistances that we are lacking: the physical, the poison, necrotic, and you can see we're not even really capped on these, but yeah, it is what it is, and this is more than enough for this character. Okay, for the relic, so first time that I'm actually recommending this item in a build. Mainly I think this item just fits the build perfectly, right? So we need a lot of levels to our skills, mainly mana strikes, and this gives us +1 to all mage skills, so that's perfect. Then it also has the damage dealt to mana before health, which is amazing. And then also endurance applies to 6 additional health per missing mana. So this is actually giving us some extra endurance threshold. It won't really show up here, I think, but as you run out of mana, your endurance threshold will go up, basically. Right, so, and then if you can get, you know, I got spell crit on here, which is pretty amazing. This is T7 increased spell crit, so pretty cool, and it does come with some mana on it, right? So very nice. I think this is one of the best relics you can get for these mana stacking builds if you get good mods on it, right? Another one you can use, of course, is the Stormcarved Testament. This one here, you can use this if you want, but then you're going to be losing out on a +1 to mana strike, right? So it's going to be a little bit annoying, maybe. All right, so let's kind of get into the skills. Actually, let's go over the idols first. Idols, very simple. All we need is the spark charge on hit, melee hit, right? And you want to get this to about 100%, right? So how are we going to get 100%? You get your idols. So the idols, the chance to apply spark charge on hit from your fragment of the enigma, and then in the spellblade passive you have 25% here, right? So you want this percent chance, so it's 25 here, 12% here, and then these can roll up to 25%, right? So you want all of this combined to be 100%, right? So why is that important? Well, it's because this is gonna give us 1 extra spark charge per hit, basically, right? So that's basically the idols. After that, I'm just going for resistance and mana idols, and then I just needed some more cold resistance, so just some generic idols. Okay, so that's it for the idols, and let's go over the skills real quick. So mana strike, first of all, we're making it ranged, right? We got the ranged mana strike, and then we're going for the mana storm and the spark charges. So mana storm is going to give us 2 spark charges per hit. Now, I don't really think that the idle chance to apply spark charge on melee hit is going to apply to the mana storm, because you can see this is a spell. And yeah, so I think you're not going to get that here. So we're getting 3 spark charges per hit, basically, guaranteed, which is pretty amazing. And then when we use our lightning blast, this will detonate 3 spark charges pretty much. So pretty cool. Okay, after that, we are reducing the mana cost of this mana storm, because if we go ranged mana strike and mana storm, it's going to be pretty hard to sustain mana, basically, right? And as we're taking damage, we're going to be losing mana, so we need to be able to regenerate our mana. So we need to first of all reduce the cost of this mana storm, and then after that, we're going for the critical mana. I can only have 1 point here, as you can see. It'd be nice to get more points in here, but I think at this point the mana sustain is totally fine. Okay, next thing we're doing here is the rune sap. Now this is extremely amazing. Basically, when you hit with mana strike, you get 12% spell damage, global spell damage per enemy hit. Let's just say I've gotten up to about 500% spell damage just from this node. All right. I mean, okay, most situations you're going to be getting about 200% increased spell damage on bosses, basically, right? This basically just will keep scaling, and as you get more attack speed, this is going to give you even more value. So that's kind of the reason why I wanted to get so many levels into mana strike, and this is actually going to be boosting the damage of our spark charges like by quite a bit. So I really think this node is important, and mainly if you want to go ranged mana strike, you're going to have to get all the sustain, you're going to have to reduce the mana cost, and then if you want this extra damage, and that's kind of why we are going for the +4 to mana strike on the chest, and all of these items here that give us plus level to mana strike. All right, so let's go over lightning blast next. We kind of really went over it, I think, so I'll just kind of quickly go over it again. But we are going into the spark charge, detonate spark charge. Spark charges deal more damage, chain and repeat to the same target, and then we're going lightning aegis, right? So we are not actually directly casting the lightning blast. We are proccing it with Arcane Ascendance, okay, with this superconductor node here. So that's lightning blast. Let's go over Arcane Ascendance. Arcane Ascendance acuity, have Arcane Ascendance not drain our mana. It's going to have a 12-second duration, and we're not casting any spells, so we can have it up as long as we want. Right, and then very important to get this node here, Chronoclasm, and this is going to give us more damage per slow like we went over before. And then this node here, Mana Surge, kind of nice to help you sustain your mana in monoliths. Okay, and then after that we're just going into the increased damage, spell damage. Okay, let's go over Flame Ward. This is kind of like how I'm setting up my Flame Ward on a lot of these characters now, is basically because we are already super tanky. We don't really need all these tankiness nodes that much, so we can focus on a damage orientated Flame Ward to give us some extra burst damage. And I'm using this, either I'm using it to block some big hit abilities, or I'm just using it for extra damage, right? So converting it to lightning, so we get this 250% increased fire damage, and this fire damage to spells, so we get this this gets converted into lightning damage, right? And then after that we're going into the +1 charge, and then with the extra points we have this less hit damage taken. You could put 1 point into the cast when stunned, and it's kind of nice for monoliths, but against bosses you really want to be activating your Flame Ward manually to block the their one-shot abilities, right? So okay, Enchant Weapon. Oh, actually, wait, before Lightning Blast. So this node is very nice for single target. Let's say if you want to have a more monolith clear orientated build, I would take this point out, basically take it out and maybe put it into the extra spark charge damage. And basically what that's going to do is this is going to chain over to mobs now, right? So instead of just hitting one target, it's going to hit 4 different mobs, and that is going to detonate all of the spark charges that are on mobs. So you're, instead of just detonating a charge on one mob, you'll detonate like 5 different mobs at one time. So that's going to be kind of nice for clear. I did try it out. It is very nice. But I wanted to have more single target. I think the clear is already fine as it is. The main thing this build lacks is single target, so I like to have the extra single target. Okay, Enchant Weapon, again, very typical. This part is just like everyone does this. Then after that, you can go into this zap if you want to try it out. It's kind of okay. I just wanted to have a little bit of extra damage on the Mana Strike, because you can see it is actually doing a decent amount of damage, about 35k. Since we are mana stacking and we are getting a few points in here for the flat lightning damage, right? So it's kind of a personal preference. You can actually go here, get some chill if you want. If you don't have chill in your build, not really that important. Okay, so let's quickly go over the passives. I think they're pretty self-explanatory, so we'll go over just the important ones. Mage, I basically just want this attack speed and the intelligence kind of, and crit multi. Spellblade, we want some of this elemental resistances and elemental damage, because I guess we're going endurance, so it's going to be a little bit hard to cap resistances, so getting resistances anywhere you can is going to be nice. And then we want these arcane shielding, attack speed, and Stormblade for the spark charge on hit. And then sorcerer, I'm picking up a lot of mana, intelligence, and then the lightning leech, then the crit multi. 1 point here for the freeze when you drop below, a certain health, below half health, and then just more intelligence, cooldown recovery, spell damage. Pretty simple. All right, so let's go over the blessings real quick. Black Sun crit multi, shred lightning resistance from ending the storm, Reign of Dragons all resistances, Spirits of Fire is the flat armor, and Age of Winter is the endurance threshold. Alright, so that is the build, guys. Hope you enjoyed this guide, and kind of an interesting way to use Arcane Ascendance, Lightning Blast to kind of help out single target on some of these builds. And I did really enjoy making this build and playing it. There is, would like to mention though, there is, the build can feel a little bit awkward to play at first because of Arcane Ascendance. It's going to lock you in place, right? So you kind of get used to it where you're attacking and then you pop your Arcane Ascendance and then you kind of deactivate it and go off, right? So it will take a little bit of muscle memory maybe to kind of get that rhythm or thing, whatever you want to call it, get that down. And then one other thing is that this character requires a lot of good gear, right? So if you don't have good gear, it's going to feel very bad to play, right? So you're not going to have the damage, you're not going to have the tankiness or the sustain to kind of just stand there and face tank things. So you will need some good gear to actually start playing this build. Okay, so I think we covered everything. Don't want to make the video too long, but maybe this will help you. This is a fun build you want to try, or you can incorporate some of these ideas into some of your own builds. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. And yeah.